And let's go to the last story before the internet weather, and it's the Mr. Robot report. Is this the final episode?
This is the final.
Because I'm behind, but it's okay.
It's the final 2.
Oh, it's the final 2?
Yep.
Okay.
So they actually had a part 1 and part 2. The last episode was called Python, and they're not actually referring to the programming language, and I don't want to spoil that. It's it's an interesting metaphor that they use at one point during the show.
Okay.
But the second to last episode was rather trippy. There's a scene where Angela is stuck in a room with a little blonde girl who looks a lot like her, and the little girl fires up an old Commodore and starts playing adventure games. Except it's a little bit weird and twisted. She's asking Angela questions that are questions a little girl should never ask a grown woman. But it feels a little bit like if you've ever seen the Parallax View, or the game where they're doing like a weird psychological test. That's how it plays out. But she's sitting there at this Commodore, and she types in the load command, which is accurate.
Load star command 1.
Yeah. See, someone's done it before.
Assuming it's on disk.
With a 5 1/4-inch floppy.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. They're nothing if not accurate.
You got to notch it so you can record on the upside down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, we're really showing our age here. But continue.
But the discs that they had in the little, there's a particular game she plays, but there's a number of other discs that are in there, and the titles of them are games like Menmaniac Mansion.
Right, which was one of the best games ever.
I never played it, but I played Day of the Tentacle, which was the sequel.
Maniac, you should really go back and play Maniac Mansion.
Okay.
It was really good.
They had
Weird
Pitfall.
Ed and all these great characters in the game. Anyway, go on.
Okay. And then there's a number of floppy disks that are in there that are named after, there were a certain set of DoD books that were referenced in the movie Hackers. And they're called by those names, like Big Red Book That Won't Fit on a Shelf or something like that. Although a couple of those names appeared in there.
So this is kind of like some weird dream sequence or something that she's having here? Okay.
Yeah. So it's not very clear if that was real or not, but kind of trippy.
But they brought out the old school technology for this sequence. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. It was kind of weird because part of the dialogue she's having with this little girl, like she'd say something, the little girl would just repeat what she just said, which felt like an adventure game. Like if you're not saying the right responses, you'll be stuck there until you figure out what you're supposed to do next.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one part where I think Price and White Rose are talking about Bitcoin, and they're assessing what Bitcoin is. It's this, it's that, it's not that great, it's good. And someone's saying that the limit is reached on the number of Bitcoins that have been created. Now, unless this show happens in the near future, it's not quite true yet. There is a hard limit.
Right, there is.
Eventual hard limit, but it's not going to...
I don't think they're near it yet,
I don't think they are.
The creation is really slowed down at this point, but still, I think
But the other point they make is that the mining is monopolized by Chinese miners, and that has actually come to pass, where there's a large number of miners in China that it makes it that if someone within China were to control all of that, they could actually tip the balance. There's a certain, I think I explained this when I did the Bitcoin book a while back, but at a certain level, everyone in the network has to agree, and if anyone ever controls 51% of those miners, they can all collude and lie about the state of the system, and at that point, the whole thing is basically shot.
Right.
So, but that is a legitimate concern, so that was kind of interesting.
Interesting, okay.
The part that I really loved in this episode is there was a menu that Elliot finds on the floor, and it turns out to be a message from another character, but it's a coded message. And he's reading out the words, and the words spell out in Route 13, the parent papers will help you find your calling, but don't be duped. Cut down the words, they be Erdos. And that was just weird enough that I remembered where I'd seen that before. The DEF CON 22 badge puzzle.
Oh, okay.
Which is a huge nerdy shout out to Lost and the guys over there who have made those games for years at DEF CON. For people who haven't been to DEF CON, there's always a badge puzzle.
Cool.
Oh, yeah. But there's always a puzzle that involves the badge and sometimes art within DEF CON and then a whole bunch of websites. And this was lifted directly from that. So it was a reference to using certain mathematical formula to remove letters out of the sequence, which eventually led to him, the person winning the game in the game, but it's part of the plot.
Right.
So that was cool. And second half, there's a few little jokes in there that I thought were worth mentioning. There's a scene where Darlene's being interviewed by the FBI, and the show airs on the USA Network, and they made references to Blue Sky and the phrase, characters like you are not welcome here. Anyone who's ever seen an ad on USA, the slogan for the longest time was characters welcome.
Right.
So that was kind of a funny little in-joke, and I think it was made with the best of intentions. There's a scene between Elliot and another character, which I can't mention because that'll spoil things.
Okay.
But they are talking about reverse engineering the firmware on uninterruptible power systems,
Oh, okay.
UPSs, which is kind of cool. And they're using binwalk and radar, and binwalk is typically used for analyzing firmware. It can be used for analyzing all sorts of files, but typically for firmware reversing. And then radar is a command line reverse engineering tool, kind of like IDA, where you can take a look at the assembly for a particular
Right, yeah.
binary. So that was kind of neat to show that, yeah, of course they're going to have the correct tools. The last season they had an after final episode scene. They also had one in this episode. And gosh, so many things I don't want to reveal, but there's a conversation that happens between two characters outside of the Fry's electronics store in Phoenix. And I knew that I could find out which one it was because every single Fry's, the front looks like something strange. The one in Phoenix looks like an Aztec temple or a Mayan temple. I might be getting that wrong. The one in Vegas looks like a giant slot machine. Each one is unique on the outside.
Right.
But that's also one of the last remaining big electronics stores from the old age that you can buy all sorts of computer parts at. So just like Micro Center in the last episode that I talked about, Fry's is in this one. So
Okay.
I was kind of happy to see that as well. And one thing that I did mention, I shouldn't say this. This is a big spoiler.
It's okay.
Spoiler time,
I've
folks.
read your
Plug
notes
ears.
here, so.
You did. Tyrell, yes, that's
he's
right,
not
Tyrell
dead.
is not dead. But Tyrell was sitting there. He's running binwalk and radar, and he's using GNOME. And if you remember the very first episode,
Yes,
Tyrell
he said he
says,
was a
"Oh
KDE
yeah,
guy."
I'm a KDE guy."
Right.
So something has happened, and there's a little bit more to it. That there's definitely a shift in the way that Tyrell has started behaving, especially towards Elliot. So I'm not sure if Elliot somehow converted him from one window manager to the other, but that's an interesting little tidbit they threw in.
Yeah, I don't know what that would mean. I mean, why that would be significant in any way, but interesting. At least I would say come join us on the GNOME side, because I don't know why anyone would use KDE. But I don't want to start a religious war here.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other tidbits on the show?
No, I mean, the cool thing is that there's all those websites they've created that are references to things that are happening in the show. So like for the episode one where they had the computer game that was, on the Commodore, that's actually somewhere and you can play it on the web. I don't have the link, but you do have to type the load command in order for it to actually start up.
Right.
And there's one little reference to Confectura Industries, which was in the very beginning of the show,
was-
the notebook that he had.
Yep.
That building shows up in the final episode.
Oh yeah, interesting. Okay, so it must be whatever, a fabricated building or something, right? I don't think that's a real thing. But,
Yep.
All right, cool.
So I guess we're not going to be talking about Mr. Robot for another year now.
This is true. Oh gosh, what are we going to talk about?
Are you going to be okay?
I have to buy a box set.
Have they been renewed for a third season? Do we know yet?
I don't know officially, but I
can't
can't.
imagine that they haven't been.
Well, Rami Malek did win an Emmy,
Right. So yeah,
so
you would think
I
they do.
imagine this is wildly successful for USA. And if they did not create a third season, they would be shooting themselves in the foot.
Right. Yeah. Why would they not?
Yeah.
So okay, cool.